Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to WatchBox, and thanks for logging on. It gives me great pleasure to announce the permanent return of weekend watches, and everything you see is for sale. Reach out to me at Tim Mosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing details on all of these watches, many of which are not listed on our website. Also, it's crunch time, the stretch run to the holiday, and we are looking to build inventory, paying our best prices of the year. Whether you're looking to sell or trade one watch or an entire collection, we pay fast, we pay cash, no upper limit on value paid. Remember, your online concierge for buying, trading, or selling, especially the watches you see here, Tim Mosso at thewatchbox.com. Let's jump straight in. I've got my lead-off hitter, a particularly fetching Rolex Oyster Perpetual Chronograph Daytona. As you can see, this model is white gold, 40 millimeters, matte black dial, red accents, radially arrayed white gold Arabic numerals, reference 116509. This is an F-series watch, so it has the older style clasp, but it still has the Easy Link 5 millimeter adjustment internally. Condition here, and you can really see it at the lip of the bezel, which is particularly crisp. It is excellent. Automatic winding, 3-day power reserve, COSC chronometer, 100 meters, water-resistant, vertical clutch, column wheel chrono, all in-house and very impressive. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer, if my camera will pick it up. My camera decided its focal length is fixed, so let's throw this on my wrist, 16 centimeters in circumference, and get a good look at it. Rolex uses gray gold. It's an 18-karat white gold alloy that's white all the way through. JLC uses it, Patek uses it. All the better watchmakers use gray gold, a white material that is 18 karat and the same color all the way through and never needs to be rhodium plated. You can see real quick alongside this Yacht-Master the difference between gray gold and steel. Steel is white, silvery white, whereas gray gold has a little bit of a warmth to it. It is gold after all. And that is the Daytona, and I'm going to show you that Yacht-Master that I just teased. This is the latest version of the Yacht-Master, redesigned for 2019. You can clearly see it's very similar, but you have that little crown between Swiss and made. So this is the 126622, platinum bezel, stainless steel case, dark rhodium dial, very appealing. And as you can see, it has a couple of handsome cyan accents. This style of dial arrived in 2016, but this is the post-2019 redesigned version of the watch. The principal change, that little crown on the dial, and then a new movement inside, caliber 3235. Automatic winding now with a 70-hour power reserve, triple lock crown, screw down, 100 meters water resistant. You can see this is not a Submariner case. It's not the super case. It's not squared off. It's not sheer. It has a nice curvature on its flank, and I can show you, I've got a Submariner with a super case right here. It is a very different case form between Yacht-Master and Sub. The Yacht-Master is also a lot thinner, being under 12 millimeters thick, and of course you have that bi-directional rotating yachtsman's bezel. It's not life-saving equipment. It's not for diving, but you can use it easily for timing, just about anything, though the intent is a match or a sailboat race within a regatta series. I also like to use these bezels as reminders to myself, because I like to set my bezel so it's perfectly aligned to the top. But if I need to remember something, I'll cant it about 15 minutes to one side, and then when I look at my watch, I'll note that it's unaligned, and I'll realize there's something I was supposed to remember. Taking a quick look at the bracelet, you can see that it's an oyster bracelet, polished down the center, upscale, traditional. The bracelet is iconic in its own right. Throw the watch on the wrist, it's a little bit more elegant in profile than something like a Sub, Sea Dweller, or a GMT. An easy and handsome watch to wear. Again, consider this to be a unisex option, 13.5 centimeters circumference wrists, no issues here. We may as well do a lume shot too, this one with chromolite is particularly well lit. There you go, right there, chromolite blue. Rolex makes many things in-house. Cases, clasps, bracelets, dials, movements, and yes, its own lume and lubricants. Impressive stuff. Let's go to a Submariner lume shot now and see how it looks. Here we've got a blue Sub by night and a blue Sub by day, made from 2008 to 2020. This was the original series production white gold Submariner. A timepiece lovingly known as the Smurf, reference 116619 in white gold. It was the first series production white gold Sub, the first super case Sub, the first ceramic bezel insert Sub, the first Sub with the Glidelock clasp. It was a feast of firsts. It's an easy watch to wear, though the heft of it is impressive. Solid case back, massive case profile, solid center links, solid end links, thick gauge clasp. It feels like a platinum watch, frankly, from any other brand. Rolex making these watches with incredible solidity, and it really is gratifying on the wrist. You can feel where the money went. A timepiece that's lovely and beautifully coherent. It has the blue dial, blue bezel combination that was the first generation white gold sub. Now, of course, it's blue bezel with a black dial. I actually like this as it reads as a bigger watch with the dial and the bezel visually blending together. 48-hour power reserve, 300 meters water resistant, actually only 12.4 millimeters thick, which is impressively thin. Scratch resistant ceramic bezel. And let's take a quick look at that bezel in action. 120 click. A wonderfully sharp detent that sounds and feels good, but there's also a creamy glide to this bezel that makes it a refined pleasure to use. White gold hands and indices. Flip it all over, you have Glidelock. 20 millimeters of tool-free adjustment in 2 millimeter increments. You can use it for fine sizing, or you can pull it all the way out for use over a dive suit as a fold-out dive extension. Double locking clasp, you have the spring-loaded lift lock, that's the first, and then you have the clamshell, 2 different locking factors. And again, here we have white gold, it is gray gold, 18 karat. Rolex smelts its own gold because it owns its own foundry. Let's jump to something a little bit more accessible here. I've got 2 Hodinkee special editions. We'll start with the more complicated of the 2. As you can see, 39 millimeters in stainless steel, a 250-piece limited edition, my personal favorite, lucky number 11. This is the Tag Heuer Carrera Dado for Hodinkee Special Series. It's inspired by the historic 3147N Carrera Dado from 1965. That would have been a 35 millimeter watch with a manual wind Landeron 189 movement inside. This is a little bit bigger. Again, a 39 millimeter steel case that's also 100 meters water resistant. We do have a sapphire crystal. It's a bubble profile to look like a plexi, but it is a sapphire. And rather than a manual wind Landeron, we have the Heuer 02 in-house caliber. And it's an automatic winder with an 80-hour power reserve, column wheel, vertical clutch, quick set date, which is on the 9 o'clock side, and then hacking or stop seconds. So if you put this watch on a water-resistant strap, it really will work as an aquatic sports watch, being 100 meters water-resistant. It's equipped with an upscale, large rectangular scale alligator leather strap in black. It has a deployant clasp. Note that the clasp, the crown, and the dial, and the movement all say Heuer. The only place you'll see Tag Heuer on this watch, it's going to be on the reverse side on the rotor. 160 years of Tag Heuer in the year 2020, and this was a 250-piece limited series for 2020. You can see the column wheel at the top of the movement, a caliber Heuer 02. It's a really good-looking caliber. This is a loomed watch. I will give you a loom shot. As you can see, it's fairly well loomed, in fact, and it wears well. It's got those distinctive, huge, angular, thrusting, integrated Carrera-style lugs that have been the defining feature of Heuer's most famous design since the original back in 1963. And as you can see, it is a good unisex option once again. Not too broad across the wrist at about 47.5 millimeters. It wears well on his wrist or her wrist, but it does have a lot of character thanks to the strength of that black dial and those broad, angular, almost razor-like lugs. And you can see one of my favorite features of these lugs is that there's actually inboard fastening. If you take a look, they're not straight down cuts. They actually angle inward just as they angle outward. So there's a lot of nuance and a lot to love with this model. Zooming out a little bit, let's take a look at our other one. 500-piece limited edition in 38.5 millimeters stainless steel. This is the Longines Heritage Classic Sector Dial, a chronometer that is also a Hodinkee special edition. And you can see that it is the Longines Heritage Classic Hodinkee limited edition. A lovely mid-century inspired sector dial in a handsome vintage-styled case with a mid-case that's quite thin, a bezel that's quite flat, lugs that are integrated and handsomely tapered. We've got a lot to love, and we'll get a little bit closer and feast on some of these details. You can see we have a Longines branded crown. We have a Longines wing logo on the reverse side with the hourglass. EFC Co., the name of one of the founding fathers of the Longines brand. And as you can see on the dial side, lovely, almost Vacheron-esque details. If you're familiar with the Historique Triple Calendar 1942, this watch is a lot like that, only without the calendar features. Inside, you have an ETA 831-501 movement, which is a 72-hour power reserve with a silicone hairspring and a COSC chronometer certification. We've got a lovely, alternately satinated and polished beads of rice bracelet that terminates in a thoroughly contemporary single-fold trigger-actuated deployant clasp. Throwing it on the wrist, you can see it looks the part of a vintage watch, though it's not quite as petite as a true vintage watch would be. It's an easy and fun watch to wear. And as you can see here, we have a lovely case profile. It does have a sapphire, even though that appears to be the plexiglass due to the bubble-like profile, and that's the idea. Both of these watches are from plexiglass stock from that era when you would have seen a thermoplastic on the watch, but both of them use a cambered box section sapphires to create the look of a plexi. Okay, let's go a little bit more upmarket here. By the way, Ernest Francion, if you're wondering who the EF is in EFCO. Now, taking a quick look here, we've got a lovely and classical Reverso Tribute small seconds, but this is the Tribute Duo Face. This is the Tribute that has two separate time-telling faculties. One on the reverse side with a 24-hour day-night indicator, one on the dial side, and as you can see, they are settable independently. This is one of the features that arrived starting in 2016, and that was the 85th anniversary of the reverse, so you get the ability to toggle the reverse dial, the travel time dial, using a little hidden pusher. Previously, on the original Reverso Duos, there would have been a dimple on the side or a pusher adjuster sticking out. This is a much cleaner look. 42-hour, shaped and sized, manual wind JLC manufactured caliber 854. It gives you the dual time capability, lovely applique, rhodium-plated dart-style indices on the blue sunburst dial. The watch measures about 46.5 millimeters from lug to lug, and a little over 28 millimeters from side to side, and about 10.3 millimeters thick. So you get a real good sense of how big it is. Reversos always wear a bit large, though. So as you can see, the watch features a relatively flat plank-like appearance on the wrist. It's really not that close to the edge of my wrist, but consider, because of the way it's shaped, it feels a little bit like a 41 or a 42 millimeter round watch. That said, it is fairly flat and it will fit underneath the cuff. The watch features a sunburst off-centered inside the chassis. It's satinated on the reverse side, and this was a feature that started rolling out in 2016. There's a little bit of a canted curvature to the case back. We have pull-tab spring bars, and then we actually have a push-button release system for the deployant clasp. So you can see that there is a little push button. You press that down, you pull the strap off the clasp. So you can remove the strap from the clasp and the strap from the case using only your fingernail. It is a very handsomely executed watch that wears well on a broad variety of wrists. It is a Casafaliano designed, though Camille Fournet manufactured strap. It is the Casafaliano house style, and it looks very good. It's an excellent match for the Reverso Tribute. Now, a little bit more contemporary, or overtly contemporary in its appearance. Here we have the Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Grand Tradition Tourbillon. So this is a watch from the Master Grand Tradition series, which is sort of the haut de gamme alongside the Duomet in the JLC collection. And it says chronometry on the dial because the caliber in this watch, caliber 978, won the Concours de Chronometrie in 2009, beating out all comers, including JLC's own Gyro Tourbillon 2. So this movement, which includes a date, a second time zone, and a tourbillon, we'll get a little bit closer. Let me see if I can persuade my camera to focus in. For some reason, it doesn't want to work with me. So we'll just use the artificial zoom. Okay, now you can see the tourbillon. It is a 1-minute tourbillon, free sprung, beating away at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and it does use an overcoil, which is rare on JLC watches. It is a very accurate watch. The one that succeeded in the Concours de Chronometrie was actually accurate to within about 47 seconds per year, which is shocking for a mechanical watch. There's a second time zone up at 12 o'clock in 24-hour format, and then there is a little jumping date. You can see it jumps from the 15th to the 16th overnight. I'll demonstrate how that works. And you can see that the idea is that overnight it will jump entirely across the tourbillon so the date indicator doesn't block your view of the mechanism. That happens in the course of the overnight period from the 15th to the 16th. You can see I'm not adjusting that 24-hour dial. This allows me to set the local time at center and the 24-hour dial separately. This is a 43mm platinum limited edition at 200 pieces, and it has a ruthenium-coated sunburst dial that's really quite fetching. It's a very wearable watch. For a 43, it's not excessively broad and it's not excessively thick, given that it is an automatic winding tourbillon with 2 complications in addition. I can recommend it for wrists as small as 15 centimeters in circumference. You get a good sense of it strapped tight on my wrist of 16 centimeters. Taking a look at the case back, unusual but not unheard of for a tourbillon. It does have a 22-karat mass that's nicely finished with a combination of media blasting, polished, and satination. We have Côte de Genève, as well as engine turning on the case back with fired blued screws, and they are fired blue, they're not chemically dyed. This is the caliber 978, you can see that well. It's a nicely done movement, handsomely executed, and very, very accurate automatic winding with a 48-hour power reserve for the 2 time zones, the date and the tourbillon, which is an impressive technical achievement. Now, from the independent house Czapek, we have the Czapek Antarctique Terre Adélie. This is a watch 40.5 millimeters in stainless steel and just over 11 millimeters thick as I measure it. It was made in 4 dial colors. Now, initially I thought it was 99 pieces per dial color, red, black, silver, and blue, but in fact it's 99 pieces for all of those, plus a lovely painted nebula dial. So this watch is actually quite a bit scarcer than the 99-piece discussion would suggest. It's 99 examples of all of the watches originally considered within this collection, and they're keeping production low on an annual basis. Now, the dial has a lovely sort of pinstriping from top to bottom. It's not quite a tapestry dial, but you can see, nor is it a conventional brushed grain. This is no 5235G. It has a wonderful, slightly irregular, almost bark-like profile. We have polished indices, applique. We have hands at center that are likewise polished. The watch is quite well loomed, as you can see. And it features hacking seconds and a quick set date, a lovely case profile, a quick release lug system. It comes with a tool, so you can easily and quickly remove the bracelet and replace it with the strap that comes with the watch. And it does come with a rubber strap with a separate deployant clasp. The bracelet that's here is handsome with polished intermediates and satin primaries. It is a twin trigger, double folding clasp. And as you can see, the watch is impressively finished on its reverse side. This is the SXH5 movement done by Daniel Martinez, formerly of MCT and Grubel Forsey, and Emmanuel Boucher, who formerly created the Harry Winston Opus 12. So it's an impressive movement. Czapek has alternately claimed 56 or 60 hours for this movement, and the reality is probably somewhere between that, which makes it a pretty good long-duration automatic winder with a platinum micro rotor that, you know, because every little bit counts, is made of recycled platinum. It beats away at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It is quite handsomely hand-finished. Most of the parts are provided by Chronode, but the finishing all done manually, and this is a movement exclusive to Czapek. It will not be found on any other brand. It will not be found on any other company that is a client of Martinez, Boucher, or Chronode. Now, what I really like is the finger trains leading down from the center, individual finger type bridges for the drivetrain wheels, free sprung with a full balance bridge for shock tolerance. It is a very good looking movement. This is the deep blue dial, as you can see on the case back, and the watch is 120 meters water resistant. A little bit like the Grunefelds, there is a mirrored beveling on the edge of these bridges. Then there's a satin sort of relieved ridge on the edge of each bridge, and then the interior of each bridge has been media blasted, so the bridges are triple finished. There's a lovely black polished bridge at center. You can see it really lighting up here, and it has 4 sharp interior angles within it. So this is probably the most impressively finished watch that Czapek has launched so far, and easily its most desirable model. As a sports watch, you can wear it full-time on your wrist. I'll throw it on my wrist so you can get a good sense of how it wears. I think even on a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference, this is going to wear well. This is really a his and hers type watch, and with only 99 made of the Terre Adélie, you might have to share just one with your significant other. Okay, going way up market now, we have sports watches with full bracelets, as you're not used to seeing them, in precious metal. We'll start with the Nautilus. Both of these models, the 5711 and the 15202, are due to be discontinued after this year. This is the 5711 1R, 40 millimeters in diameter, 8.5 millimeters thick, 120 meters water resistant. As you can see, it is quite well loomed, automatic winding with a 45-hour power reserve. And as with the core Nautilus models, since the first one in 1976, we have a rounded polygon bezel with a dial, sapphire, and inner bezel that match that shape. Note on the older Royal Oak design by Gerald Genta, there is a rounded polygon for the bezel, but then the inner bezel, the sapphire, and the dial are all round. On the Nautilus, there's more of a symmetry, a parallelism of shape and form. As you can see, we have a dial that is a sort of brown bronze metallic. It's lighter at the center and darker at the edge. It's a gradient style dial. The bracelet, case, and lugs all integrated together and handsomely hand finished. And again, 120 meters of water resistance is exceptional for a watch that's only 8.5 millimeters thick. Now you can see the movement is nicely finished, And it's well done. Automatic winding, Gyromax style free-sprung balance, 6-position adjustment, anti-magnetic silicone hairspring, unidirectional winding action with ceramic rotor bearings. It is a very impressive machine. We'll throw it on my wrist, again, 16 centimeters in circumference, and get a sense of how it fits. It fits well. There are bigger Nautilus models, the 5990, the 5980, of course, the 5726 annual calendar, and those wear more like Nautilus offshores. If you can imagine the Royal Oak to the offshore, that is sort of how the 5711 relates to the Nautilus complications other than the 5712 moon phase. All of the Nautilus complications are bigger, thicker, and wear much larger. This watch is nice and handsome, thin, flat, fine, versatile as a sports watch and a dress watch, and rare in rose gold. It's not a look you see too often. Let's say yellow gold is even scarcer on modern watches, and this watch, a sports watch in yellow gold, launched in 2017, the year after Audemars Piguet began rolling out modern reference Royal Oaks in yellow gold. So we've got a blue dial that may look like the standard galvanized blue tapisserie on the other 15202s, but it has a yellow that is specific, or I should say, a blue tone that is specific to the yellow gold. Now, taking a quick look at the case, you can see that the metal is razor sharp. All of it wonderfully intact, symmetrical, full, fleshed out, and the contrasts distinct between satin and polish. This is a watch in outstanding condition. Of course, the dial is still cut on a pantograph lathe, the mimicry engine. We have white gold bolts inside the bezel, hex bolts, as they always have been. We also have a hex crown, nice little design parallelism there. Flip it over, you can see that the movement is still the AP2121, as it has been on the jumbo models since the very first Royal Oak 5402 in 1972. JLC 920 based. Today, the movement is only made in-house by Audemars Piguet. AP makes the movement, finishes the movement, and while it has JLC roots and has been used by Patek and Vacheron as well, in fact, it powered the 222 and the original Nautilus 3700. Today, this really is AP's movement. They fit it with high degree of finish, automatic winding. It's always been a unidirectional automatic winder with a 40-hour power reserve. AP fits a Gyromax style free-sprung balance for precise adjustment and durability, and it beats away at a very vintage 19,800 vibrations per hour. The watch wears larger than the Nautilus on the wrist. With the Royal Oak, particularly the Royal Oak or offshore on a bracelet, you can feel that it wears a size or two larger. So think of this more like a 41 millimeter round watch, and you get the general idea. It's going to wear like a 41 round watch, which is why I would not recommend wearing it on a wrist smaller than 14 centimeters circumference. A woman might try it out, but she might also find that it's too big. It's worth giving it a shot, though, especially if your wrist is more oval than round. Okay. Let's do a quick set of lume shots for those two monsters. We talked a little bit about sports watches being lumed, automatic, full bracelet, and relatively water resistant. And while the Nautilus certainly is, the Royal Oak is splashes only because it has 50-meter water resistance and a push-down crown. So you can see they are fairly comparable, not just in total luminous output, but they even look quite similar in the dark. Slight advantage to the Nautilus because the lume strips on the hands and indices seem to be just a little thicker, just a little bit. All right. Now, a quick budget alternative. This is a 2020 limited edition of 500 pieces in steel by Sinn Spezialuren of Frankfurt, and it's a tribute to both their own history and that of Heuer Leonidas. So Heuer Leonidas created the original 1550 Bund chronographs for the German armed forces. The thing is, Sinn, a domestic firm, was given the service contracts to maintain these watches over decades and keep them in service. So gradually, a lot of the parts were replaced with Sinn-branded components. And so the 1550 became part of the Heuer Leonidas history, but also the heritage of Sinn Spezialuren at a time when it was very much a specialist in rugged aviation chronographs. Now, this is the 158. It is 100 meters water resistant and a limited edition of 500. 100 meters is a lot for a pilot style watch. It has a pilot style 60-minute count-up bezel that is bidirectional. It's anodized aluminum, and it has a plexiglass crystal to give you a little bit of the off-axis distortion and plexiglass character of the original models. Features on this watch that would not have been on the original models, well, basic fit, finish, and materials, of course, but also the high degree of water resistance, the automatic winding, and the date on the dial. dial. Inside, it's a top-grade Sellita SW510, so you have a hacking seconds function, and you have a quick set for the date. Cam lateral clutch chronograph. An interesting feature about the Valjoux 7750-based chronographs, which this is, it's a Sellita SW510, they use an oscillating pinion. So if you push the start pusher and you hold it, the oscillating pinion means that unlike a conventional lateral clutch, there's almost no jump to the chronograph seconds hand when it starts up. So if you push and hold the oscillating pinion, which is also used by, among others, FP Journe, an unadvertised and often overlooked advantage of the 7750 architecture, the watch has a 48-hour power reserve, and it comes on a wonderfully supple Zinn factory calfskin leather strap. I'd recommend it for wrists as small as 15 centimeters in circumference. It's well-loomed, water-resistant, automatic winding, rugged, and unassuming. It's a watch that you can wear to fly under the radar, both figuratively and, if you are a pilot, perhaps literally. Plenty of lume on the dial side as well. This is, by any standards, a Grail watch. 40 millimeters in white gold and part of a family made from 2004 to 2010. This is the Patek Philippe 5970G in white gold, the last of the Lemagne-powered Patek Philippe perpetual calendar chronographs. You can see it has blackened white gold hands and indices on a lovely silver gray dial, perpetual calendar and chronograph both with a tachymeter scale added on the dial. The case is beautiful with lovely angular and fluted stepped out lugs welded onto the case profile. The entire case assembled and finished by hand with a concave bezel profile and a lovely curvature about its mid case. As you can see, it features elongated rectangular style pushers, and the watch includes the Lemagne base 2310. So 2310 is the Lemagne Abauche, but Patek makes many changes to create the CH2770 you see right here. Patek replaces the flat hairspring with an overcoil, finishes it all to Geneva Hallmark standards, replaces the mobile stud index with a free-sprung Gyromax style architecture, creates a capped column wheel that's more beautiful and more shock resistant, and increases the power reserve from 48 hours to 65 hours. It remains a column wheel lateral clutch chronograph, adjusted in 6 positions, pivoting on 24 jewels with a wonderful quality about the hand-finished steel and brass components. It beats weight of vintagey 18,000 vibrations per hour with a balance that's almost the radius of the movement, big, almost pocket watch-like. The movement as the Omega 321 went to the moon, and as the 2310 Abauche, it saw duty in the likes of Vacheron, Patek, Breguet, Roger Dubuis watches, and many others. It is a true column wheel, traditional lateral clutch high horology movement. The column wheel action is wonderfully tuned and crisp, and as you can see, it has a perpetual calendar with a moon phase. You do not need to adjust the perpetual calendar until the year 2100. The moon phase, once adjusted, does not need to be touched for 122 years. Now we have a full white gold deploying clasp. It's worth mentioning that about 2,800 examples of all 5970 chronographs, that is all 3 golds, and special edition watches and platinum watches, that's 2,800 from 04 to 2010, making this not just an emblematic Patek Philippe complication, but also a very scarce watch. A beautifully made timepiece, handsome on both sides, and a good solid fit for a small wrist, as it's only 46.1 millimeters from lug to lug and 13.2 millimeters thick. Speaking of size, this watch has it. This is the opposite philosophy in watchmaking. Bigger is better, but not senselessly large, purposeful. Launched in 2014, this is the A Longa Unzona Richard Longa Perpetual Calendar Terra Luna. Now, it has a dial with a triple overlapping Johann Seifert scale. The dial is made of sterling silver, galvanized silver white. We have a perpetual calendar and a regulator dial, so we have separate hours, minutes, and seconds. We have stop seconds, so you can set the watch precisely against a reference time. We have a scrolling power reserve indicator down at 6 o'clock. The watch, when fully wound, has a 14-day power reserve. Flip it all over, you can see it has a celestial complication. Here we have an orbital moon phase. So we have the balance representing the position of the sun. We have the Earth, and it does rotate. You can see there are 24 time zones marked off, and if you look carefully, there are 24 hours indicated at the edge of this bezel that surrounds the stars. So you can actually line up the time zone with the hour and use this as a world time if you have very good eyes. You can see the Earth rotates. There's a little moon phase, and the moon phase changes to track the actual phase of the moon, but it also orbits the Earth as it does so. So you have a very dynamic case back. Now the movement, L96, is a constant force movement, again, based on the Longa 31 technology. It has constant amplitude for 14 days because a hairspring between two third wheels acts as a buffer between the huge mainsprings and the escapement. So when it's fully wound, it doesn't run fast, and when it's mostly discharged, it doesn't run too slow. One of the great features of this watch is that center oversized pusher adjuster steps everything in sync. So the day, the date, and the month, if you fall, like, let's say 4 days behind, the watch stops, it falls 4 days behind, wind it up, set the time, and then toggle that pusher 4 times, and it'll adjust everything in sync over 4 days, and you'll be caught right up. The watch, by the way, is about 46 millimeters as my caliper measures it, and 17.2 millimeters thick. So it's a big watch, make no mistake. I believe you need a wrist of at least 17 centimeters circumference to wear this watch, but you're getting a lot for your money, as this watch is full of features and engineering. The timepiece also features incredible finishing. Don't overlook that. Let's see if I can get this. For some reason, my camera doesn't want to get close and focus at the same time. So you can see that we have blued screws, black polished surfaces, a freehand engraved balance cock, glasuta stripes across the bridges, mirrored anglage on their edges, and satination on the wheels. It's a technical and aesthetic tour de force. Let's say you want even higher levels of finish, but comparable levels of complexity and size. Well, in 2007, Greubel Forsey launched this, the Tourbillon 24 secondes, the 24-second tourbillon. You could see that the tourbillon does not make a 1-minute circuit like a conventional wristwatch tourbillon. We have a constant seconds dial because the tourbillon makes a circuit every 24 seconds. It is angled at 25 degrees, and you can see it is immaculately hand-finished with black polished pillars, black polished bridge, a golden chaton fitting the pivot jewel for the staff of the tourbillon carriage. We have an overcoil hairspring, 6-position adjustment, free-sprung architecture adjusted by hand. The dial is made of solid gold and then silver galvanized. The power reserve scale, 72 hours by the way, is itself made of gold. And then the watch includes a lateral viewport where you can better appreciate the angled tourbillon. The watch has a case in white gold that's 43.5 millimeters in diameter, and you can see these wonderful concave lug profiles. This is one of Robert Greubel's subtle refinements that he adds to these watches. Size, yes, and they have wrist presence, but there's also nuance and beauty to the details. Greubel Forsey believes more is more, not just more size and complexity, but more attention to detail, and you see it on the reverse side. This watch includes a set of bridges that are frosted using a stiff wire brush, a very traditional method of creating a granular frosted surface. We have a solid rose gold nameplate and also number plate. We have beautiful mile-wide beveled bridges. You can see the anglage here is incredible. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sharp interior angles. 9 interior angles on the reverse of this watch, 10, 11 interior angles on the reverse of this watch. We also have handsome solarization just below. You can see the 2 satinated barrels and the solarized bridge that sits just beneath, or I should say base plate that sits just beneath. It is a gorgeous movement. In the tradition of La Chaux de Fonds watchmaking, Greubel Forsey making between about 100 and 150 watches a year with just over 100 employees, one of the lowest ratios of watches manufactured to employees in the industry, and it is because of their uncompromising standards of finish. A very special watch. It does have a matching white gold deployant clasp. I'll throw it on my wrist. This is actually a better fit than the Longa Terra Luna, and you can see that it would fit on my wrist. If I were so inclined, I could wear this watch, but you've got to be ready to field questions and be noticed when you're wearing a timepiece like this. But as good as it gets in terms of engineering, finish, and exclusivity. Plus, with Antonio Calce at the wheel of Greubel Forsey these days, they now have business leadership to match the artisanal and engineering chops, and I really think this is going to be the next independent brand to catch fire, because the watches are undervalued for what they are. There's no way this is a sub $200,000 watch in a world where a Journe tourbillon is worth $1 million. I'd rather have this. But given my choice, you know where my heart lies. Each a 2013 5-piece limited edition. These are the De Bethune DB16 regulator tourbillon. Regulator, not in the sense that the hours, minutes, and seconds are split, but in the sense that they are extraordinarily accurate chronometers type watches. In the old days, mother clocks in watchmaking and clockmaking studios would be used to regulate those watches and clocks being serviced. Those mother clocks needed to be unerringly accurate, and these two are. The DB16, descendant of the 15, which makes sense, and the 17, which doesn't make sense because you'd think that would have come after. But these watches are descendants from those perpetual calendars, and although they were launched in 2013, they feature case shapes that echo the 15 and the 17. This is the original DB1 case profile, originally penned by co-founder David Zanetta back in 2002 for the original DB1 chronograph, de Bethun's first product. These watches, however, are full of features. Now, de Bethune, which makes about 200 to 220 watches a year and has assembled fewer than 3,000 watches in its entire history, it makes its cases, its dials, and its movements. And you can see here the case is familiar, white gold in this instance. The dial is real reductive rose-lay de guilloche with a rayon that emanates out from underneath the moon phase. We have a fired titanium blue cosmos into which the spherical moon phase is set. The moon phase is 1/2 blued steel, 1/2 white palladium. There's a little leap year phase indicator underneath. We have a date, we have a day, we have a month, we have a deadbeat seconds complication. The dial is silver with blue printing to add a little bit of warmth. The moon phase, once set, is set for 1,112 years, basically set it and forget it. And the perpetual calendar is good until the year 2100. Now the watch also features a quick set that allows you to rapidly set the watch. And you can see how I can quickly and easily set both the date and the month using this quick set mechanism. Flip it all over, it gets even better. We have a power reserve indicator that's for 96 hours of manual wind power reserve. We have a retrograde age of the moon indicator, so you look up the age of the moon and then you set this indicator to a number, so it's easy to precisely set the moon phase, and when it reaches the end of its travel, 29.5 days, it retrogrades back. Twin self-adjusting barrels, they cannot accidentally be overwound. And then at center, we have a fired blue titanium bridge with a second locking lever escapement that represents the deadbeat seconds mechanism. There's a coiled hairspring within, and then a solid gold hand-finished 14-carat escape wheel for the deadbeat second system. We have a delta style or deltoid style bridge for the barrels, and you can see we have Côte de Bethune laid down by abrasive wheel across the bridges. We have lots of black polishing of the screw heads, yes, but also underneath the balance structure. We have mirrored anglage that you'll note is a mile wide and blazing. This is very traditional fine finish. You lose nothing when you buy this watch. You're getting the avant-garde, but also respect for tradition. Now, the tourbillon is made of white gold, silicon, and titanium. It is the lightest tourbillon carriage in the world. It weighs 0.18 gram. It also beats away at 36,000 vibrations per hour, like in El Primero, and this is a 30-second tourbillon. It makes 2 circuits per minute. The balance wheel is patented. The tourbillon design is patented. The escape wheel is patented. The twin self-adjusting barrels are patented. The process for fire bluing titanium is patented. The spherical 1,000-year moon phase is patented. This watch is protected by at least 8 individual patents, so you know where your money goes when you buy a de Bethune timepiece. Again, only 5 of these made in white gold and 5 made in rose gold. I do wrist shots with both of them. They're technically and dimensionally identical. The watch is only 48.5 millimeters from lug to lug, so it winds up wearing quite easy on a smaller wrist. I could actually recommend this for a 14 centimeter circumference wrist. Now, a feature that most high horology watches do not have: hacking or stop seconds. How much you loving that? Quickly showing you the rose gold model, you could see that it is technically and aesthetically the exact same watch. Also a 5-piece limited edition. This is just in rose gold. Throw it on the wrist. Again, handsome, maybe a little bit more raffish, maybe a bit more extroverted than white gold, but some folks prefer the warmth of rose gold, and against certain skin tones, sometimes it does look aesthetically superior and more dramatic. But the good thing is, at least while these watches are in stock, you have options. So, if you like what you see and you're ready to take the next step, or you'd like to sell or trade a watch, reach out to me, Tim Mosso at WatchBox.com. Time out, Tim out. Thanks for logging on, and it's good to be back.